Welcome to the Australian Calabrese Cultural Association program, Sono Calabrese, a program where we have conversations with people from our community who can tell us about their experiences here in Australia and also in Italy. We're very fortunate today to have as our guest Dominic Bonadio, who is a comic figure in the hospitality industry here in Melbourne, having for many years run the restaurant Il Duca. And recently he's written a book, Che Fortuna, which translated would mean either what luck or how lucky. Dominic will tell us, but it's a lovely book and highly recommended. And I'm sure that if you contact Dominic, he'll be able to arrange it, because as I understand it, the arrangement is that all proceeds go to his favourite charity. And he can tell us about that in a little while. I should say that these programs, if you've seen them, they're not edited, so they're raw, but they're genuine, and what is conveyed is who the people really are. So welcome, Dominic, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to have the conversation.
Thanks for having me on, Vince. It's a pleasure.
And as I said, I found your book absolutely fascinating in terms of not only the factual aspects, but also the emotion that underpins the whole volume. How did you come to write it?
It's quite an interesting story. I call myself probably the most reluctant author in existence. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was doing a little function next door in our little function room, and there was a group from the Kids Tennis Foundation here, a group of ladies who were discussing about having a keynote speaker for their lunch the following Mother's Day, which was in May the following year. And I don't know what possessed me. I said, well, look, I'll get up and talk. And they said, would you? And I said, yeah. And so didn't think anything of it. One of the leaders of that group was a lady who I knew, and I thought, oh, well, this will go nowhere, they'll forget about it, and next year I'll just go on. And in February that following year, she rang me, she said, Dom, are you still right to do the talk on Mother's Day? And I thought, oh, yeah, why not? Thinking it'd be about 35, 40 women, whatever. So as the time came closer, I got a flyer in the mail, and it had my name, Dominic Bonadio, keynote speaker, RACV club, and I'm thinking this is a little bit bigger than what I thought. So then I found out that it was going to be 350 women and no men in the room. So I got ready and did a 20-minute speech. Anyway, I did the speech and thinking that that was it. I sat down, and the lady who was sitting next to me said, have you written all this down? And I said, no, I haven't. And she said, well, when you go home, start writing. I did. I started to write, and basically my intention was to write it for my family, just to give them an idea of, my grandparents, where they lived, how Dad came to Australia, what he did, and all those sorts of things. Just a little bit of family history. And then, as it turned out, my brother fell ill, so for about 3 years I didn't write anything. I just let it go. He was ill, eventually passed away in September 2019, and the manuscript, basically half finished, was sitting on my desktop on my computer at home. And then I'm a great believer of sliding door moments, and the sliding door moment came with COVID. And I remember being at home, we were closed for 250 days during that period. So I remember sitting at home one day. I painted the outside of the house, which originally I was going to get somebody to do, but I thought, well, I'm sitting at home doing nothing. So I painted the outside of the house, and I'm sitting down, I painted the inside, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of the time? And there, sitting on the desktop, was my icon with, as it turned out, Che Fortuna. So I just typed on it, and I just went hell for leather from then on, and basically finished the book.
Yeah, well, it's a fascinating, I must say, and as I indicated, people can obtain it and the proceeds will go to...
Yeah, basically, because as I said, I was very reluctant to have it published. The only reason I got it published was, as it turned out, the day that I finished the book, I was sitting in the office here, actually, at work, and I wrote those wonderful words, the end. And that particular night, a very regular customer of ours came in, and he actually was responsible for my brother Ralph, who the book is basically dedicated to. He did a commercial for the NAB Bank many years ago, and the commercial was basically about an Italian waiter, supposedly Positano, and he uttered the famous words, "La nave al porto è al sicuro, ma non è per questo è stata costruita." And Wayne was a gentleman who produced that ad, and I just said to him, "Oh, Wayne, you're not going to believe this. I've just finished this manuscript for my family. It's about my grandfather," and I said, "You're in it because of Ralph's ad." And he said, "Good." He said, "We're going to publish it." I said, No. I said, "It's not for publication, it's for my children." He said, "No." He said, "Too many of these stories never get told." So he left, and I thought, yes, this will go nowhere, and great, I'll just run it off, send it to the kids. And I must admit, Wayne was persistent. He kept at me for at least 2 months, saying, "We're going to publish it, we're going to publish it, send it to me, send it to me." So eventually I gave up, and I basically never ever wanted it to be about me. So I was sitting there thinking, I didn't want to sell the book. I had no intentions. It was the idea of it. So Ralph spent 5 years, the last 5 years of his life, 2.5 years he spent at St Vincent's Hospital. So I thought, well, let's see what we can do. I rang St Vincent's. I said, "Look, this is what I'm thinking. I'd like to set up a fund in Ralph's name. I'd like the money that I know that's been donated, I want to have complete control of it so that we buy equipment for the hospital for the ward that he was in." I said, "If you can do that, I'm happy to go ahead." And they said, "Yep, we do that all the time, fine." So basically what happened is I donate the book to people, and people have been donating to St Vincent's, and we've raised $44,000 and bought a heap of equipment, which is great.
And the donations simply go to St Vincent's, or do they have to nominate?
There's a QR code in the book. Okay. People just click on it, and it goes directly to Ralph's fund, which is what we...
Anyone who's interested?
Oh, yeah, by all means. I haven't got that many. I printed off 500, and they went very quickly, and we've got another 100, so I've got a few left. But I'd be happy to give some out.
All right. Now, in the book, it's, as you say, about your family, and clearly your parents were born in Colombia.
Yes, they were, yeah. In La Mencia del Nicastro, as it was in those days.
And as I understand it, your dad arrived here in Melbourne in about 1952.
Yeah, and once again, that was a sliding doors moment too, because Granddad was actually in America in 1900, and went there as a 14-year-old on his own, which today we wouldn't send our 14-year-olds to a milk bar. And there he was, went over there, worked, and we were supposed to be in America, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, he had to go back to Italy. Then the Great Depression happened, and of course they couldn't get back to, and then Dad came out in '52.
And immigration from the American perspective changed also. They made it
incredibly. They made it far more difficult
to get into.
After the I think from the Depression times on, it was very difficult
as well. So in a way, Australia was lucky.
Oh, well, I'm the lucky one. I always say it's the luckiest country in the world.
Your grandfather couldn't go, but it highlights the fact that Colombia has been an immigrant country for a very long time.
Very much so. Most of my relations are in Australia. We still have a pocket of cousins in Italy who I visit regularly. But if we all had stayed there, I think our circumstances would all be different.
It would have been a lot more difficult, I think. And as I understand, there were 3 siblings?
Yeah, there were my brother Michael, my brother Ralph, and myself. Yeah, there were 3 of us.
And your brother Michael, what does he do?
Michael is now retired, but he worked at Ford Motor Company as an engineer for many years.
Okay.
Ralph was my business partner for 40 years.
40 years, and you've been in the restaurant industry for a very long time.
Well, actually, it's quite funny because this book came out in September last year, I think, and it actually coincided with my 50th anniversary in the industry, which was October. I started at a place called the Melbourne Townhouse in October 1973, so yeah, it was 50 years ago.
And like a lot of children of immigrants, you had a double career in a
Very
sense.
much so, yeah.
Teaching
Well,
was also...
yeah, well, Dad
And
was one of those Calabrians who you couldn't get a nicer person in life. He was an absolute gem. But one of the things he always instilled in us was education. He left in grade 3, as many of our parents would have, went to work on a farm, and his great belief that education got you somewhere. So even though the pull of the hospitality industry was so great, to sort of appease and make him happy and the family happy, I went on and became a teacher, which I absolutely loved. But really survived only 4 years because the pull of the hospitality industry was just too great.
And you were the only one of the children that was born in Melbourne.
Yes, the other two were born in Calabria. Yeah, the other boy was in Valencia.
Where did you live?
We lived, originally we lived in St Philip Street, Brunswick, with my uncle and auntie, and there were, apparently when I was born, there were 18 people living in that house. We sort of marvel at it. When I look at it, I think, my God, I don't know how 18 people actually fitted in one room, let alone in the house. It was just amazing. And then we went to Fitzroy.
How they got on.
And how they got on. There was apparently there were parties every night. I mean, obviously I was little.
Recently, someone told me that they used to go on holidays down to Rosepark.
Yeah.
20 people in the one place.
Exactly.
And as I say,
But apparently after dinner they used to put on the old 72, which they brought over from Italy, and they'd be dancing and carrying. So it was a really great lifestyle for them.
And so you went from Phillip Street
to Fitzroy, hence my love of the Fitzroy Football Club and now Brisbane Lions. But so we moved to Fitzroy, lived in Fitzroy till 66, and then moved to West Preston, which I've been in Preston for ever since, basically.
And school?
Yeah, started at Sacred Heart in Fitzroy, then went to St Greyfields, and then from then went to Maris Brothers in Preston, and on to basic RMIT.
And am I right that you had to move from Fitzroy because the government decided
we had a
housing commission?
I would love that in my portfolio now. We had a solid brick, bluestone footed townhouse in Fitzroy, a house in Fitzroy, which was a terrace house, 2 bathrooms, which was unheard of in those days, 2 toilets. So it'd be worth an absolute mint now. And they pulled it down to build those great housing commission blocks.
And that's how you got to Preston.
That's how we got to Preston. Yeah, we had. Yeah, I think you probably. But Dad had the opportunity of buying in the Boulevard in Kew and Gilbert Road in West Preston, and because his compadre was living down the road, his compadre said, "Oh, this is a great area," and thinking great financial move. But anyway, we lived in Preston, which I loved. I loved the northern suburbs.
But I think also, as you say, more importantly, the land size in Preston.
Oh, that's what got him over the line. He loved it. Well, we as kids, I remember Ralph and Michael and myself, the first time we saw the land, we'd mapped out our cricket pitch and where we were going to play football. Within 3 days, it was dug up with every imaginable plant, and in the end up we had chicken coop and bred rabbits and all sorts of stuff.
And look, the interesting thing about that is that in a way they were the true environmentalists.
100%.
60
100%.
years ago, unlike now.
I look at the vegetarians these days now and I say to them, well, look, I was eating all that vegetarian stuff 40 years ago because that's what we had.
And there was no waste.
No,
because all the
absolutely.
waste went back into the land.
Nothing wasted.
And the vegetables were fresh, the eggs were there.
We were recycling 40 years ago. All our stuff was gone into the bin and then back into the garden. It was amazing.
And I think the other aspect, because a lot of people don't understand why, to use it crudely, the wogs, as they were known then,
100%.
wanted to grow all these vegetables. But in a way, I think that generation that came from Italy, they had a real connection with the land. Very similar, in my view, to the connection that the indigenous people even
very much so. Very much so.
And so that
the land was their lifeblood.
Exactly. And so they weren't just growing for food. I think the act of growing in itself was something that they actually enjoyed.
The proudest moments I saw Dad was when he'd come in with a tomato this big and say, "Oh, look what we got." And I mean, when you have planted that seed and you've watered it and you've nurtured it, and that's what it provides. Like obviously with our children, the same thing.
Exactly. And what about school? How did you find school?
I was probably reasonably gifted at school. The only problem is I was incredibly lazy at school. It just didn't. I had a lot of trouble with. I never had trouble with authority at home, but I had a lot of trouble with authority in school. School teachers and I didn't really get on all that well. In fact, when I went back to tell the people at the school that I'd become a school teacher, they were just absolutely amazed that after sort of butting heads with it for so long, I actually became a teacher. So,
and how did you get on with others at school? Was there any?
We were very lucky. We had quite a few Italian boys that were at that school. Obviously, we were called box, and I mean, in those days, we just took it on board. We didn't really worry about it. That's what we were named. Well, so be it. I played Aussie rules for many years, and I mean, I don't think I went a quarter without being called a walk. That was just it.
But it was interesting that if you could play sports such
as you basically you were accepted. Yeah, that was part of it. Yeah, exactly.
If you chose soccer,
100%.
You were still outsider.
And I never ever played soccer. My kids did. In fact, I used to take them to the Aussie rules grounds and say, "Sure, you don't want to play Aussie rules?" Say, "No, they were playing soccer." So I loved it.
And that's good. And as I understand it also, because you say in your book that you think that hospitality and entertainment
very much so.
Same.
I sort of started in entertainment, I suppose, as a 3-year-old. I used to sing. Wish I had that voice now, but anyway, I used to sing, and we used to sing, as you know, there were Italian weddings. We used to go to an Italian wedding nearly every week. And of course, we'd be the... Small. No, they weren't small. We used to be what we call the halftime entertainment. And because while the band were taking a break, myself, my brother, my two brothers, Ralph played the guitar, Mick played the piano chord, and I used to sing. So we'd sort of provide the halftime entertainment. And then I morphed into being in restaurant, which is basically a simple.
But in terms of entertainment, you and your brothers formed a band.
Yeah, we did. We had a really incredibly well thought out name, the Trio Bonadio, which I don't know. It was. Yeah, I sort of wonder sometimes we should have come up with something a little bit better. But that's what we did.
And you appeared on TV.
Yeah, we did. We were on Swallows Juniors and the Happy. I think it was the Happy Show, which with
the Tarek.
The Tarek Show. That's right. The Tarek Show with Happy Hammond. That's right. So that was. I think it was in the very early '60s.
And again, like a lot of children of immigrants. Effectively, you also had 2 jobs. You were going to school and working.
I was working.
As a 15-year-old.
I was a 15-year-old. I started off in hairdressing with my cousin Lou, who had multiple hairdressing salons all over Melbourne. And I worked with Lou for a while. In fact, I nearly took up hairdressing, but as I said, unfortunately, I suppose nowadays, now that I think about it, hospitality was probably the magnet in my life that has got me where
as you mentioned, I think you started off at
Melbourne Townhouse, and then I worked at the Southern Cross, which was probably the biggest turning point in my career.
And when did you start off in your own?
Started off in 1981 or 82. We started a restaurant called Fellini's in Hawthorne. I'd actually started at Geppetto, which I eventually owned in 1981 after they first opened. So I started working there. Absolutely loved the place. And then we bought a restaurant, my brother and I and my best man Charlie bought a restaurant in Hawthorne called Fellini's, which we ran for a couple of years, and then we ended up going back and buying Geppetto. Ralph and I bought into Geppetto, which we owned for 25 years, and then now in Duca.
Yeah. And we're sitting
We're sitting Il Duca, yes, we are. We
And
certainly
in
are.
case someone doesn't know, it's in Wellington.
It's in Wellington Parade, yeah. I always tell people it's pretty easy. It's directly across the road from that big building called the MCG, so hence the football connotations we have throughout the whole restaurant.
And I'm interested to say, obviously, that you see a lot of things in the restaurant business, including footballers who come along.
Yeah, we do. We've had some incredible people in this place. I sort of often pitch myself the people that have come through over the years, and they still do. We've found a little niche in the market, and we're so close to all the sporting. Like we do a lot with the Australian Cricket Board, and obviously Tennis Australia, and the AFL, the soccer now with Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City. So yeah, we have become pretty well known for a sporting type restaurant.
And for a brief period, you could also say that you were a journalist.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're sort of sitting at the table with my master's memorabilia. I had the fortune of meeting a guy called Frank Vardaniga, probably in the early 80s. And Frank became a sports journalist, and we became really, really good friends. And Frank always said to me, look, if you ever want to go to any of the major tournaments, just let me know. So as it turned out, he got me a press pass for the 2005 Wimbledon, which I went to and helped him out doing his interviews. But the main one, which I really treasure to this day, was the 2007 Masters at Augusta, where I had pretty much did all of Frank's interviews. So I got to interview all the Australian players, I got to interview Tiger, and so it was an incredible week of my life.
And you still play golf?
I play very badly. I love the game, absolutely love the game.
So I
but
should ask you what your handicap is.
yeah, it's in the low 20s, and I think I'm not playing towards that at the moment. That's for sure. In fact, I've just come back from a trip down at Cape Wickham last weekend, which was just spectacular.
Yeah. And of course, you married.
Yes,
How did you make your wife?
we met through actually a friend of Ralph's, called Sam, who's now my brother-in-law. He married Julie, who is Mary's sister, and in those days the idea was if you went out you had to have a chaperone, and Julie's sister Mary was the chaperone. Not that it made much difference, she was 3 or 4 years younger, and of course I used to tag along, and then obviously we met and basically got married.
And as you said, I think you've been married for about
got married in 1978, so that makes it 45 years, yeah.
And how many children?
Got three children, Marco, who's 42, Liana, who just turned 40. In fact, my wife's in London at the moment, gone to visit her, as both sons have, and Robbie's 32. And they've all gone over to surprise her, and they actually surprised her all at different times.
Oh.
They just knocked on the door at different days and walked in the door. So she lives in London. She's been there for 14 years.
Oh gosh.
Anyone who is got their kids going overseas, don't get them an Italian passport, because it's very hard to get them back afterwards.
It is. And any of the children in the hospitality?
Yeah, Robbie's the one who probably I thought wouldn't, ended up being in it. He's now working at a really good restaurant called Grill Americana in the city. He's sort of supervisor manager there, and they love him, but I want him back because I trained him, so I would love him back. But no, he's doing really well, and I'm glad that he's sort of gone out and working somewhere else. The oldest one is a project manager for Kane Constructions. In fact, he's done very, very well in his life. He was responsible for building the 2 big stands at Skills Stadium. So he's done pretty well. And my daughter, she's a social worker. She wants to save the world. The social worker in London is probably one of the toughest gigs you could get. We sent her over with her then boyfriend, And we thought, okay, well, when they get over there, they'll probably get engaged. But unfortunately, the opposite happened. They actually broke up. And then, as it turns out, she met a British boy, and it's just history. She's there now.
Well, that's the thing.
It gives me a chance to go over every couple of years.
It's good. It's good. And in terms of, you mentioned your brother, Brad,
I still walk in every day and miss his presence. He was such a major part of my life.
And that's an amazing thing in itself, isn't it? Because a lot of
people often say, look, we were chalk and cheese. Ralph was very, very organised. I'm probably completely opposite. I fly by the seat of my pants. But we worked well together. He picked up on the parts of the business that I wasn't good at, and vice versa. And I think the one thing I remember saying to him when we first got into business, and I think he took this, we took this really on board, is that we are brothers first, business partners second. If ever it happens that our business is coming between us being brothers, we get rid of the business, we don't get rid of the brothers. And we lived by that until the day he passed away. As I said, we had our arguments, we had our differences, but for 40 years we were business partners and brothers.
And that's a wonderful thing.
Oh, it was amazing. People often said, I can't stay in the same room as my brother, and I said, well, we basically did. Yeah, we lived together.
Well, but there is that sort of constant changing.
Oh yeah, very much so. Of course.
The core.
The core was there. I think we basically had the same sort of business ideals. We both loved hospitality. We both loved people. So that basically kept us going.
Yeah. And if you had to nominate one thing that you think has changed in the hospitality industry since you started, what would you say is?
There's the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start with the bad part of it.
Yeah.
The costs of running a business these days have just skyrocketed. And I use a really simple example. When we first started, we'd get the power bills, and you wouldn't even think about them. You just didn't even, you sort of paid them. I think those sorts of things have just increased our costs, running costs, and you can't keep putting your prices up. There's so much competition out there, so you basically try and work a bit smarter. The good part of the industry, and believe it or not, it's been good and bad in some ways. All the celebrity chefs and food shows that are on TV now have made people less scared about trying something different. So you can put on a different item on a menu and people will try it because they've seen food on TV and they see how it's prepared and the love given to it, and they will try different things. 30 years ago, you basically had to keep the menu the way it was, and that has changed.
Yeah, well, that's good. And the other thing I want to ask you about, obviously, you're going back to Calabria.
Yeah, many times.
When was the first time?
First time I went back to Calabria was 2005. I went with Dad in 1960 and I was 4 or 5. 61 when I was 5. And I still remember it as like a dream, but the first time seriously I went back was 2005 with my wife. And I don't know what it was, but I got off at the train station in Santa Femia, and my cousin picked me up and we went to the family home, and it actually felt like home.
Yeah. And a lot of people
it was amazing.
Express the same thing, which is amazing. And
I had no affiliation to Calabria at all, besides my parentage.
Precisely. But what I'm leading to is that appears to be a universal reaction in the sense because Jewish people, for example, they speak about going back to Europe and
same thing.
Suddenly
Greeks do exactly the same thing. Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So there must be, despite what others might say, there must be that sort of real connection to the heritage, because that really is what I think is important.
I was sitting next to my cousin who I'd never